Hey there, Buttercups! Today we are going to talk about the Boston Tea Party. It is a name etched in the annals of American history, a seemingly simple act of defiance that sent ripples across an ocean and ignited a revolution. On a chilly December night in 1773, a group of colonists, disguised as Native Americans, boarded British ships docked in Boston Harbor. Their mission? To send a very clear message to King George III and the British Parliament. This was not just about tea. It was about a brewing storm of resentment, a culmination of years of perceived injustices inflicted upon the American colonies. The colonists felt increasingly marginalized, their voices stifled by a distant and seemingly indifferent British government. The Boston Tea Party was not a spontaneous outburst of anger. It was a calculated act of protest against unfair taxation and the erosion of colonial liberties. To understand this pivotal event and its far-reaching consequences, we need to step back and examine the events that led to that fateful night. The 7 Years' War, a costly conflict that raged from 1756 to 1763, played a significant role in setting the stage for the American Revolution. While Britain emerged victorious, the war had drained its coffers. The British government, burdened by a massive war debt, looked across the Atlantic to its American colonies for a solution that involved tightening its financial grip on the colonies. The British saw the colonies as a source of revenue, a way to replenish their depleted treasury. The colonists, many of whom had fought alongside the British during the war, felt a sense of pride in their contribution to the victory. However, that pride soon soured as they were slapped with a series of taxes and duties, levied without their consent. This sparked outrage and resentment among the colonists. They argued that they were being treated unfairly, forced to bear the financial burden of a war they had helped win. This sentiment, this feeling of being used and disregarded, would become a major catalyst for the growing discontent that culminated in the Boston Tea Party. The Currency Acts of 1764 and 1772 made the situation even worse. Although not explicitly stated in the acts, the underlying goal of the acts was to abolish colonial currency. Without the ability to further print their own currency, the economy of the American colonies soon suffered and made the colonialists' ability to pay the newly levied taxes more than just a burden. At the heart of the colonists' grievances was a fundamental principle: no taxation without representation. The colonists argued that it was unjust for the British Parliament to impose taxes on them and to regulate their currency without their having elected representatives in that very parliament. They believed that without a voice in the government that levied these taxes and regulated their currency, they were being denied their basic rights as Englishmen. This rallying cry resonated throughout the colonies. It became a powerful symbol of colonial resistance, uniting people from all walks of life against what they perceived as British tyranny. The colonists felt that their hard-earned money was being taken from them without their consent, used to fund a lavish lifestyle for the British aristocracy, and to further tighten the empire's control over their lives. The principle of no taxation without representation was not just a slogan, it was a reflection of the colonists' growing sense of identity and independence. Actually, no regulation without representation is a more suitable term to what the colonists really wanted. They were no longer content to be treated as mere subjects, subservient to the whims of a distant king and parliament. They were British citizens, and they demanded to be treated as such. The Stamp Act and the Townshend Acts, adding fuel to the fire. The British government, seemingly oblivious to the growing discontent in the colonies, continued to impose its will. The Stamp Act of 1765 was a direct attempt to raise revenue by taxing legal documents, newspapers, pamphlets, and even playing cards. Every printed item required a stamp, purchased from British authorities as proof of payment. The Stamp Act was met with fierce resistance. Colonists boycotted British goods, organized protests, and even resorted to violence and intimidation against tax collectors. The Sons of Liberty, a secret society formed to oppose British policies, became increasingly active, using propaganda and public demonstrations to rally support for the colonial cause. The British government, feeling the pressure, eventually repealed the Stamp Act. However, the victory was short-lived. In 1767, the Townshend Acts were passed, imposing taxes on essential goods imported from Britain, including tea, glass, lead, and paint. These acts reignited the flames of colonial resistance, leading to further boycotts and protests. The stage was set for a showdown. The Boston Massacre, a city on edge. Boston, a city known for its independent spirit, became a hotbed of anti-British sentiment. Tensions between colonists and British troops stationed in the city reached a boiling point on the evening of March 5, 1770. A minor confrontation between a group of colonists and British soldiers quickly escalated into a chaotic scene. As more colonists gathered, throwing snowballs, rocks, and insults at the soldiers, reinforcements arrived. Whether by accident or design, shots rang out from the British lines, cutting down 5 colonists and injuring several others. The Boston Massacre, as it came to be known, sent shockwaves throughout the colonies. The incident was used as propaganda by colonial leaders like Samuel Adams and Paul Revere, who depicted the British soldiers as cold-blooded murderers and the colonists as innocent victims. The Boston Massacre further inflamed anti-British sentiment, pushing the colonies closer to the brink of rebellion. The Tea Act, a monopoly disguised as a bargain. Because of growing resentment, the colonists boycotted tea sold by the British East India Company and smuggled in Dutch tea, leaving the East India Company with millions of pounds of surplus tea and facing bankruptcy. In 1773, the British Parliament passed the Tea Act to save the East India Company. The act not only granted the British East India Company a monopoly, but also allowed it to sell tea to the colonies duty-free, making it cheaper than other tea companies. So the colonists were not able to collect revenue arising from levying duties on the tea, and at the same time had pay a tea tax whose revenue went back to England. Needless to say, the colonists were outraged, and the smuggling of Dutch tea skyrocketed. The Night of Defiance, the Boston Tea Party. On December 16, 1773, the simmering tensions finally boiled over. 3 ships, the Dartmouth, the Eleanor, and the Beaver, laden with East India Company tea, lay anchored in Boston Harbor. As a large crowd gathered at the Old South Meeting House, colonial leaders debated how to proceed. That evening, a group of approximately 150 men, some disguised as Mohawk Indians, boarded the ships. With determination and purpose, they systematically dumped 342 chests of tea, an estimated 92,000 pounds, into the harbor. The act of defiance, witnessed by a large crowd gathered on shore, was carried out swiftly and efficiently, with no violence or looting. The Boston Tea Party sent shockwaves throughout the colonies and across the Atlantic. It was a bold and daring act that demonstrated the colonists' unwavering resolve to resist British rule. The Tea Party was a pivotal moment in the road to revolution, a turning point from which there would be no turning back. The Boston Tea Party was more than just an act of rebellion. It was a catalyst that set the wheels of revolution in motion. The destruction of the tea was a clear message to the British Crown. The American colonists would no longer tolerate oppressive taxation and interference in their affairs. This daring act of defiance united the colonies in their fight against tyranny and paved the way for the formation of the First Continental Congress in 1774. The immediate aftermath saw the British government respond with the Coercive Acts, also known as the Intolerable Acts, which aimed to punish Massachusetts and restore order. However, rather than quelling the unrest, these measures only fueled the flames of resistance. Neighboring colonies rallied to Boston's aid, sending supplies and support, and the sense of shared purpose grew stronger. The Boston Tea Party also served as an inspiration for other acts of resistance. It showed that ordinary citizens could stand up to a powerful empire and make their voices heard. The bravery and determination exhibited that night became a symbol of the American spirit, embodying the values of liberty and self-determination. In conclusion, the Boston Tea Party was not just a protest against a single tax. It was a defining moment in the struggle for American independence. It demonstrated the power of collective action and set the stage for the Revolutionary War. The ripples of that night in December 1773 would eventually lead to the birth of a new nation.
Thank you for watching. Hope you found this video informative and entertaining. Please subscribe, like, share, and comment. We do like to know and hear your feedback. And if you have the means, please consider supporting us on Patreon, where you can get early access to our videos, and where we post bonus material. Till next time, this is Geeky Tidbits saying cheers and have a good day.